Sweaty.
No, you look great.
Well, oh, thank you. Welcome back, everybody, to the Take a Stand live event. This is a fantastic opportunity for you to listen to 35 stories. These are amazing women that I've all brought together who are going to share their stories of triumph over trauma with you. So this is something that's happened in their life that they have been able to navigate and work their way through. And as we are on YouTube, thank you for coming back and listening to another episode. I'd like to encourage you to, if you haven't already and you're interested in living life trauma free, to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, thumbs up if you like the content. And if you have a question for Carrie, please do leave it in the comments box below. You'll also find her details and information so you can reach out to her as well. So I feel like I've done my YouTube bit, which is obviously very important. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So if you could, yeah, it's great. It's great to have you. I've heard so many incredible stories over the last couple of days. It's quite mind-blowing, the experiences that people have lived through and the multiple experiences it is that they have going on in their lives over a period of time. So it'd be lovely to hear from you and your own personal story of triumph over trauma.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, my story, it's a long story, so I'm going to try to condense, but I am an empath, and I think that's where we start here, because growing up in the 80s and 90s, that term really wasn't something that anybody knew, but it means that we feel the energies of other people. We're very sympathetic. Ooh. Everything okay?
Sorry, something switched on. I don't know. Hang on a sec.
Sure.
I can't figure out what's going on. Where is it? Oh, how rude of me. I don't know where that sprung up from.
Technical difficulties, it happens.
So where were we?
I was just talking about being an empath and the fact that in the 80s and 90s, it really wasn't a term that we knew about. It just describes how we feel things and how we relate to others. And knowing that now, I look back at my childhood and I was always the friend who wanted everybody to get along. I couldn't deal with conflict very well. Things like that. I felt things very deeply, very real. Anytime somebody was fighting, I felt it. And, it's just part of my story, really. So being an empath, now I've learned that narcissists and people who are takers, we use the term takers in that they take more than they give in a relationship. And it could be anybody. It could be friends. It could be relatives. It could be anybody. But they are drawn to empaths because we feel things and we genuinely want to help others. And they can benefit the most from that. So we didn't really also talk about narcissism in the 80s and 90s the way we do now. But I was married to a man, young, but old enough to know better. In my 20s, I got married to a man that I'd been dating for a few years. And I think everybody kind of saw what was going on, but just wanted to support me and be happy for me. And it turned out to be a very abusive relationship. Like, I grew up in a loving family. My parents are fantastic. They're still who I admire most in my life. And his family was very abusive in all the ways. Like, they would swear at each other, and they loved each other, but this was how they communicated. They cursed and swore and used words that I never would think about using to my parents or grandparents. And so being immersed in that kind of a family was difficult for me. It caused me a ton of stress. So I found myself sick at least twice a year so badly that I had to go to the hospital. And they just told everybody it was food poisoning. But looking back, I believe that it was stress. So in that relationship, I think I don't know what caused it. And for years, I believed that I caused it. But there was not only the mental and emotional abuse with all of the language and swearing and yelling at each other that I wasn't used to, but it became physical after we got married. There was, and I never believed that I was in an abusive relationship because he never hit me in the face. And now, and years later, you kind of learn all the different ways that abuse kind of manifests. But there were some pretty messed up things. Like there was burning. I was burned with a soldering iron. I was hit with a sledgehammer. I was choked to the point of unconsciousness. And it was all because I was being punished for talking back or anything like that. And now, I mean, my friends would look at me and never believe that I went through some of these things because I'm sassy, and I speak my mind, and I've always been like that. So I was punished a lot. And I've done all the therapy, and I've gone through all of the stages of trauma and grief. And this was 25 years ago, so it's taken a minute, but the changing point for me, I started recognizing that healthy relationships don't really look like this. And, I did totally believe that I didn't deserve anything better than that. And it's all part of the mind games that abusers like to play. I don't necessarily think this person is a bad person, and I won't share a name or anything like that. But the saving grace for me was that he was very into public appearances. So none of this ever happened in public. And if I threatened to go public or tell people about it, he just would fold. And it was never like, oh, well, you can. So that was my saving grace. But the pivotal moment for me was, I was starting to come around to the idea that this wasn't a healthy relationship. I was sick literally all the time, stomach ailments, throwing up, all kinds of, like, I'd break out into rashes and just not be able to explain it. And so I started kind of putting some things away to be able to escape one day. And one morning I woke up with a double barrel shotgun pointed at my face, point blank. I mean, it was very close. And I'm just at that point, my self-esteem had taken a hit. It was the lowest I've ever felt in my life. And while I didn't ever think about hurting myself or suicide, I didn't have thoughts like that, I didn't care about my life. And I didn't care if he shot me in the face at that point. I thought, just do it. Just do it. Put me out of my misery. And he pulled the trigger, and it was empty, of course. I'm still here. And he said, bang. And I was just like, who in their right mind? Why would you do this? And I didn't even react. It was just, but that was the day I knew I had to get the heck out of there, like, quick. So I packed up all my stuff in garbage bags. I grabbed my dog, who also went through abuse and was terrified of men because of the way he was treated, my precious dog. And I went to my sister's house. My family all lived and still lives in that town. It's a very small town. And I just went there, and, I had a key to her house and everything. So I ended up hiding in the basement because he had gone to work, and he came after he knew something was wrong, because he started calling me and I wasn't answering and everything. But he came to the house, and I took my dog and hid in the basement because there weren't any windows and nobody could get me down there. And anyway, fast forwarding, it's just, failure is not an option for me. I'm pretty strong willed, I guess. And at that point, I was deep into depression over being treated this way. I didn't have a whole lot of value for my own life, but I didn't really think about just not doing anything. It was always like, well, I've got to get up and I got to go to work. I have to pay the bills. I have to do this. I have responsibilities. And I recognize that it's not always like that for women in this place, or even men, anybody who finds themselves in a relationship or a situation like this. But it never occurred to me to just stop. So I called my boss, and everybody had kind of seen some of the treatment that I was dealing with, and she was super supportive. I told her I was leaving, and she was like, okay, take the day, if you need tomorrow, if you need more time, just let me know. And I got my stuff together, and I just got out of there. And I recognize again that not everybody is in the place where they can do that, or they had the support to be able to do that. I had my family, I had it, but it was very traumatic. I mean, that's not even the worst thing that happened. Was the gun pointed in my face wasn't the worst thing I went through. So fast forward a little bit, and I was working for a local nonprofit, and I always kind of want to be the best at what I do. And so I wanted to excel in that field. I wanted to be management or move up to the next level. And so to do that, I met a person who had just gotten a master's degree in public administration. So I went back to school and I did grad school. I put myself through grad school working full time. I got divorced from my abuser, without a whole lot of incident, basically because I threatened to go public with everything that he had done. And he didn't want anybody to know. So that was my saving grace, that he cared about what other people thought. Immediately, he started going to my church, which for the entirety of our relationship, I was raised in a Baptist church. I went, my parents were both involved in church, and, I was raised a Christian. I'm still a Christian. I don't feel like that ever goes away. But he, from the start of our relationship, refused to go to church with me, other than like special occasions, Christmas or holidays or whatever. And he immediately, when he figured out that I was gone, he went to my house. We had gone through marriage counseling, and he just did and said all the things that you're supposed to say and do. So my church family kind of put their arms around him and outed me, because I was the leaver. I left him, and rather than dragging him through the mud, I just didn't say anything, but I didn't have my safe place to go to anymore. So, moving forward, I feel like I've rambled on. I'm all over the place with my story.
Good. It's all relevant. I mean, it's all relevant. It's good for people to hear that, it's never just one thing.
No,
it's a whole series of
a million things.
Events. Yeah, a million. Yeah. And sometimes it's really hard to, we say, put your finger on the pulse to put across the emotional turmoil that you went through. It's hard.
It was a lot. And I didn't actually deal with triggers that I had until much later. Probably in the last 5 years or so, I have really started doing some self-work and healing those triggers, because it was the littlest things. Like, I went into Home Depot with a friend and had almost a total meltdown because something, and I didn't even recognize it as a trigger, but my ex-husband was a very handy guy. I mean, he was good at all of the manual labor things. He could lay brick. He could do he could build, he could do electricity, he could do all of that stuff. And so being in a Home Depot triggered me, and I never realized, you don't recognize what those trauma triggers are. Mm-hmm. And these days that's a pretty common phrase as well, as triggers. So recognizing and just trying to work through figuring out what those triggers are. Like, I don't like to play video games, and my daughter's father, I have an 8-year-old now, and my daughter's dad, we would always want to play video games. And I was just stuck. I get so stressed out about it because it seems like always in a video game, you're chasing or you're being chased and you're running away from things like this. And it was only after really putting effort into thinking about why I didn't like video games, it came to me that I don't like being chased. I don't want to be chased. It scares me. It stresses me out. And just even thinking about it right now, my stomach is getting tight. So once I figured that out and explained it, he was like, okay, I get it. No more video games, or, like Bejeweled or something that where it's just an independent, it's a puzzle more than anything. I can do that. So I put myself through grad school. I excelled in my job. And then, I got into another relationship with my daughter's dad, and he's kind of narcissistic, which is a different kind of abuse. But we worked together, for a while. We aren't in a romantic relationship now, but I consider him a dear friend, and we parent well together. So we moved across the country. We moved to California. We got married. I got a different job, and it just went up from there. Once I left that first terribly abusive relationship, it just didn't occur to me to stop. I recognize that that's not the case for everybody. And I was in a really low place mentally and probably physically as well. But, I did some work on myself, and the most work that I've done on myself has still just been in the past 5 years, recognizing those triggers, working through that trauma. And I had to heal from trauma 25 years ago, like now. And the healing part is not linear. And that's what people don't understand. You start to heal and you just kind of go up, and you're done healing. But I don't believe that we're ever all the way done healing. There's always ups and downs and backs and forths, and it is not linear. And at this point, I've survived after that trauma, and I've moved through all of the pain. And, it wasn't easy, because my tendency, and I feel that it's the tendency of a lot of people in the world, is to just shove that pain down. I don't like to cry. I definitely don't like to do it in public or for anybody to see. I feel like it shows weakness for me. And I think there's more strength in showing the emotion and working through it than there is anything else, and being able to face those fears. So pushing it down is not the way to go. I have learned that the only way around is through, with pain and trauma, and working straight through it. Face those feelings, let yourself feel it. And it's okay. Nobody likes to feel depressed or anxious or anything like that. But knowing that it's temporary is where the power is, I think. This too shall pass. This too shall pass is something that my mom always told me, and I actually have it included in a tattoo that's on my arm.
Oh, wow, nice.
This too shall pass. And I just think about it. She said it to me all the time. If you're sick, this too shall pass, sweetie. This too shall pass. And it's true. Everything is temporary. And the only way around it is through. So now I have 2 businesses. I'm a business owner. I offer business coaching, profitability coaching, and I'm really passionate about helping people, helping others, whether that's other business owners or just other regular people who are going through trauma. And I've learned to do Reiki energy healings. So I am passionate about that. It isn't part of my main business. I started a secondary business that deals with healing crystals and some metaphysical things, but it's all dealing in light. I don't want to ever use the word, witch. According to my second business, it's all light. And I have experienced some powerful energy healing. So I want to offer that to people who don't think they can do it themselves. But I'm here as a living testament to you can definitely, you can get through it. You have to face it and let your emotions out rather than shoveling it down, because if you push it down, it's going to come out someday and it won't be the way you want it to be. So if you feel it when you're feeling, if you feel it when you're feeling it and just let it flow, let your emotions flow, it's more temporary than it would be if you bottled it up and then just let it explode.
I think it's fascinating, isn't it? How that sense of resistance and the fear of moving through to the other side is so all-consuming and feels so real at the time that I think it's until, well, for me anyway, until I've done it a few times, you know, I've done it the first time, I've worked my way through it, I'm out the other side. And this isn't just like having a session with somebody and working your way through it. This is like months of working your way through it.
Months, it can be years. And like I said, it's an ongoing process. Healing, women never stop healing, you know?
Is once you've done it a couple of times, you start to build up that trust muscle of, actually, yeah, I can do this. It's not going to be pleasant. It's going to be really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I can, if I keep going, move through it. And it's almost like rinse and repeat. When something else comes up, you do exactly the same thing again, and you move through it. You might use a different
There's
method.
lots of techniques and tools to help through it. And it never is something that is pleasurable, for sure. But it can be less difficult as you do it. And one of the biggest quotes that I've heard, you know, even relating in business, is to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely.
Get out of that comfort zone. The comfort, and this is a quote that I heard in a movie, I think it was The Greatest Showman. Comfort is the enemy of progress.
Yeah. I see so much trauma playing out in business with people, for women. I only work with women, so I don't know about guys. But I see so much trauma. Yeah. So much trauma playing out in people's money stories, in the sense of not believing in themselves, not believing that they can make money, not believing that what they're offering is good enough. There is so much trauma that plays out in business. It's one of the things I believe that will cripple a business, is if someone isn't able to see it for what it is the first part, which
to recognize what's happening is so powerful.
It doesn't always happen.
So I'm a big proponent for therapy. I have a therapist. I have herself. I mean, there's boundaries, of course, there needs to be with any kind of relationship like that, but to have somebody to talk to who can and has the skills and the tools and the ability to help you, it's a game changer for sure.
Yeah. It should be when we do our businesses, be one of those things, like a financial advisor that you have, that it's like, it's non-negotiable. You just have it.
You have to do it as part of owning a business.
Yeah. It's an essential ingredient. But in the UK, we have this mentality that you only use it when you need to be fixed or you're in crisis, which is a really unhealthy way to look at it.
It is. And I think that's like all over the place. It's a stigma around therapy that you don't need it until you need it. But the thing is, if you do it on an ongoing basis, or at least somewhat ongoing, you don't go into crisis as much, or your crises aren't as bad because you have those tools and coping mechanisms to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved also what you were saying about it being trauma recovery and healing is an ongoing journey. It's not a quick fix. I often think of it like addiction, like alcohol addiction or
Yes.
like drug addiction. I think of it exactly the same way, which is interesting because other people don't seem to see, not many people do seem to see it that way, but
Yep.
you're addicted
A
to
lot of people would say, oh, I have a meeting with my therapist, or if you're even strong enough to tell people what you're doing, and then they're like, oh, she's broken, or
Yeah.
what's wrong with her that she needs a therapist. And I think that we're really starting to make that more mainstream. It is an ongoing process for sure, but the stigma is getting less and less, at least here, around therapy and mental health and mental wellness, because it is an ongoing journey and you have to take care, the self-care bit. Doing self-care is not a weakness. It's not being selfish. It's maintenance. It's like rotating your tires on your car, getting an oil change. If you need self-care, whether that looks like a massage or a therapy appointment or acupuncture, you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. And I've learned that as well, because not everybody in my life, most people in my life would see some of the things that I do for self-care as, oh my God, she is so extra. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe that makes me extra, but I'm able to care for my daughter.
I think extra is good though. Extra sounds good though.
Yeah,
I think extra sounds awesome.
Yeah. So I'm not always extra, and I'm not always very good at taking care of myself, but I do recognize when I need it, which is something that I might have recognized in the past, that I needed self-care, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what that meant. And maybe
I have to work at it.
Yeah, maybe it's laying on the couch for an afternoon, or maybe it's a nap. I mean, those things are free.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
In the work that you do, is there a theme that pops up over and over again that you just see repeatedly?
Boundaries. Healthy boundaries. Creating boundaries from the get-go of a relationship, whether it's personal or business. I have learned, because being an empath and being so passionate about wanting to help others, I haven't always had very good boundaries. And so I would have people texting me at midnight and, oh my God, you have to, or they text me a picture of a letter that they get from like a Department of Revenue or something. And, oh, my sales taxes are due, or, oh, I don't know how to do this. And I'm like, so previously I would stop everything and help the person do whatever they needed to do, no matter what. But now I have included in my contract documents, I have, expected response times, or basically in my business, the more you pay for my services, the more responsive, the faster the response you're going to get, and what you can expect from me, as well as what I expect from my clients. So I think being clear on expectations and having healthy boundaries. I just started, I have an iPhone and I put a bedtime on my iPhone. So no texts, no notifications after 9 o'clock at night. It just goes, and it's an automatic thing. You can set it up to be automated. I'm sure that, Android phones everybody's got the capability. And if something is triggering me, like I know for a fact when somebody says to me, this is ridiculous, that word ridiculous triggers me. I'm not necessarily sure all the way why, but I know that it does. It makes me go on the defensive immediately. So when somebody is triggering me, I have no problem muting their texts or emails, and not blocking, but muting it so that I can see it and comprehend it and process before I react or respond. So healthy boundaries.
That's healthy.
I think so too.
That's really healthy.
Sometimes people think it's harsh, especially if somebody comes to me in crisis. They need help and they don't care what my boundaries are. But having those has also helped my well-being. Like, I'm not stressed when I get up in the morning because I'm triggered by seeing a name or something, a person that maybe I have fired clients. And that's not something I ever saw happening for me, because as a business owner getting into business and wanting so much to help, I started my business wanting to do anything and everything that I knew how to do. I had the knowledge and tools to do to help whoever needed it. And I didn't care about the price or anything. So boundaries are very important. And that is something that keeps coming up no matter what the relationship, personal or otherwise. It's even with my relationship with myself or with my daughter. She's just learning about these things. She's 8. So, boundaries aren't a bad thing. They're
a good thing.
Yeah, they're definitely a good thing. And, it can look different for every person that you deal with or everything that you deal with. My email.
I think it's definitely a key component of recovery is boundaries, relearning boundaries. It's funny, something happened to me the other day and I got triggered by something. And actually, if I'd had a boundary in place, I wouldn't have got triggered. I would have dealt with it very differently.
Yeah. If you can deal with something when you see it on your own pace, rather than immediately when it happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes that piece itself can
triggers
give
a whole
you
load of
time to process and everything before just that knee-jerk reaction, which is what happens after we're triggered.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking back now, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Well, the first thing that comes up in my head is don't sweat the small stuff. And that's another key phrase. My mom always used to say it. I think I even have one of those little books with anecdotes in it that's called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. But what's the small stuff? I mean, that ranges from when we're younger. The small stuff or the things that are small now were huge then.
Yeah.
So I think I would tell myself, that I'm not alone, because I feel like as a child, I felt alone a lot. And I felt like I needed to be as independent as I was. And it wasn't necessarily the case. I had family that loved me all around, but I didn't want to be needy or whatever the word is around that. So I just did what I did and, kind of went on with things. But don't sweat the small stuff is a really important thing, I think. And just defining what that means is different for every age or every situation.
Great advice.
Thank you.
Really good advice. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it.
I am passionate about overcoming trauma and abuse and all of it. And if I can help even one person, I'm a happy girl.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be lots of women listening to this who will see themselves in your story, which is fantastic, because it also means if they can see themselves, then they're halfway there.
Always a way out.
Halfway there, yeah.
Yeah, I've had people reach out to me just on social media and be like, I'm hiding from my boyfriend. And I'm like, where are you? I can send help. What is it? What can I do? I was going to offer boxes up, just boxes or paying for a lift or something to get these people out of their situations. There's boundaries that have to happen in that too, but I welcome anybody to reach out to me if you have questions or just need encouragement. I am the cheerleader for everybody who wants to get out and wants to overcome, but you have to want it. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I think you've written a book, haven't you?
I have. I haven't written. I'm in a collaboration right now, so it's called Life Lit Up.
Yeah,
and it's me sharing this same story, probably in some more detail. I have a chapter in the book, and it is a compilation of other business owners. I mean, it is business owner based. It's all about overcoming something huge and doing it anyway. And that's kind of a mantra that I have as well, is that I did it anyway. And one thing that I know for sure is that I'm not necessarily competitive But sorry, my phone, I had everything silenced. Anyway, I'm not necessarily competitive, but if you want a strong reaction to me, tell me I can't do something. I mean, there's going to be times when I say, no, I don't know how to do that. But if it's something that especially if it's something that's part of my wheelhouse and that I know, I'm going to be like, okay, you don't think I can? Okay, we'll see.
Watch this space.
I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to take a billboard out and show you how I did it. So, that's just a little bit about me. Some call it spiteful. I call it determined.
Yeah. It's spiteful didn't come to mind at all. Just determined.
The people who are telling me that I can't do it might see that it's spiteful, but they and I are in different places in life. So
yeah, and they've got their own agenda and their own motivations, which it depends on your intent. I always think it just depends on your intention. Forget what their intention is. It doesn't
matter what their intention is.
No, just be responsible for your own. That's all you can do, really.
That's all you can do.
Well, thank you once again. I really appreciate that you've taken the time to share.
I hope this reaches all the people that it needs to reach.
Yeah, it will do. It will do.